morning, everyone, and welcome to this critical session on digital technology and AI for climate and disaster resilience. I'm Hasina Rahman from the International Rescue Committee, and I'll be your moderator here today. Thank you to ADB colleagues for hosting us here at the 59th Annual Meeting, Civil Society Programme, and a warm welcome to all of you joining us in person in Samarkand, and also the colleagues who are joining online from across the region. Just to set a bit of a context, this is not a theoretical discussion that we'll be having today. We're here because the climate crisis is already displacing millions, causing billions in damage and overwhelming existing response systems, particularly in fragile and conflict-affected settings. Today, we'll explore how data and AI can either amplify community resilience or deepen existing inequalities, depending on how we design and deploy these tools. I'm here to facilitate what I hope will be a rich and solution-focused conversation with all of you. Thank you. So let me just flick through. So just to explain a bit about the background about how this session got together. So this session is co-convened by two organizations deeply rooted in the community-led disaster response and resilience building. IRC, this is an International Rescue Committee, is a global humanitarian organization working over 40 countries around the world. In Asia, we
Apologies, we just have a little tech issue in the plenary hall. The connection should be back shortly.
Organizations across 18 countries in Asia, working on disaster risk reduction and humanitarian responses across Asia. Together, IRC and ADRRN, we implement the SIDRA project, Scaling Innovation for Disaster Risk Reduction in Asia. This is supported by the Swedish government, SIDA, and the SIDRA project, it strengthens community resilience through evidence generation, locally led action, and policy influence. So for audience who may be wondering how ADRN and IRC, we got together, we are long-standing partners implementing this regional large-scale project together. So just a bit about housekeeping. So this is a safe space. Basically all of you are, feedback is welcome and contributions will remain. There should be a dialogue and engagement. There'll be some filming and photography. So if you have any reservations towards that, please do share with us. The session will be recorded. And if you need to report a concern, there are a few ADB colleagues in this room, so feel free to reach out to them. There's a pigeonhole, which is basically an interactive device for all of you to basically ask questions to any of the panelists on the GROW. So you can scan here, and then there's a key event passcode Samarkand 2026. So if you want to kind of just keep a snapshot of that, okay. And then reminders for online participants, audios will be muted and questions can be again sent through Pigeonhole using this passcode, Samarkand 2026. And then for on-site participants, we have access to Uzbek or Russian translation. So if you want to log in to Zoom using your phone and headphones, the QR code and the link is there. So please feel free to do so. And as I mentioned, suggestions are welcome through Pigeonhole. The session is being recorded. We have a couple of colleagues who have also joined online from our ADB Manila headquarters, and I would like to basically recognize Madhavi Pandit, Senior Economist from Macroeconomics Research Division, and Takaki Misaki, Senior Economist from Data Division at TRDA. We also have an ADB colleague who is joining as a panelist online. A couple of the panelists today here have joined online, and we will be introducing them on the go to save time so that we can have a more of an interactive session. So yeah, let's kind of let's dive into the session. So I just wanted to so we're talking about data for development, and this is basically a snapshot of World Risk Index data for 2025. And if you can see here, there are 15 countries, and out of 15, more than half of them are from Asia. So, and that's an indication for how vulnerable Asia is to disasters as we speak. So just to put some figures additional figures to this, in 2024 alone, over 24 million people were displaced by disasters across Asia region. So this is more than half of the 45.8 million as we're seeing here. So just want to ground ourselves in the reality that we are facing, that these aren't just numbers, each represents communities displaced, lives disrupted, and development which is being reversed. So the questions that we have before us today are not whether we use technology and AI to respond to disasters or make our communities more resilient, but how to use them in a way that actually strengthens rather than bypasses communities. As the World Risk Index says, satellite technology is only effective when adapted locally. That's what we'll explore today. So with this, the session objectives, just in a nutshell, because we'll be going through like different speakers. So our aim is for all of us to see how community-driven information systems and critical infrastructure can support disaster resilience, understanding the role of quality data in policy making, and recognizing integration challenges at the community level. And in addition, some practical insights through some live demos. And then we will talk about the partnerships models that could be used across our sector to basically in disaster risk mitigation. So by the end of this session, we want all of you to leave with some concrete ideas, whichever sector you're from, in your own work, whether you're from government, civil society, private sector, or development institutes. So with this, I want to start our panel discussions. And to ground our discussions here today, I'm really pleased to introduce Professor Debbie Guha-Sapir, Founding Director of MDAT, the world's first global database on natural disasters. So if you've ever cited disaster statistics, then likely this will have come from MDAT. Debbie is an award-winning academician. She 2023 Blue Planet Prize she won for her work reducing the human impacts of climate disasters. And Debbie will really help us understand how AI can address critical gaps in disaster resilience. Debbie, can I invite you to come to the podium, please? Thank you.
Are you going to change the slides, Amina? I can do it.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. It's rather kind of you to show up at this ungodly hour for many of you who have jet lag to deal with, like me. But thank you for coming. So, as Hasina said, my name is Bharati Guha-Sapir. I'm a professor of epidemiology, public health and epidemiology at the School of Public Health in Louvain, at the University of Louvain in Belgium, in Brussels. The Faculty of Medicine is in Brussels. And I'm also a senior research fellow at the Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore in the US. So that's more or less in a nutshell my background. And when I came in to this the center, I saw the name of our session was digitization, already a difficult word to pronounce, and artificial intelligence. I mean, that is probably two of the mind-numbing terms that instantly have people turning around and say, I'll just get a coffee for an hour and then come back. So I'm afraid that although the title of it might be a little mind-numbing, we are hoping that this session will, of course, open up ideas for you and to see how innovative we can all do better for the crisis response and recovery. So the basic tenet of anything that we do in humanitarian crisis is really driven by a concept which has not been around for that long. And the concept is of vulnerability and resilience. So in other words, how vulnerable are people? I mean, when you look at, I mean, if you take a good example from epidemiology, from infectious diseases, if you take an example from there, what it is that if you have a virus that is circulating in this room, if you have the same virus that we are all exposed to, some of us are going to fall ill and some of us will not, right? Some of us will catch the cold or catch whatever it is that we have to catch, and some of us will not. What does that mean? It means in a very, if I skip a lot of steps, it means that some of us are more vulnerable to the infection than others. And the task of epidemiologists is to find out what makes a person, me, more vulnerable to this virus than the person next to me. That is the question. And once we have answered that question, we are already a great deal halfway forward to resolving the problem. So vulnerability as a concept is an extremely important concept, which in disasters and humanitarian crisis, we have not really dealt with in any effective way. So what have we been doing all this time for years, maybe decades? You know, I'm quite an advanced person of an advanced age. So I've been in this business for decades. And what have we been doing? We have essentially been a response-oriented community. So we wait until something happens. It's a bit like COVID. We wait until something happens, some infection sets up, some epidemic happens, and we respond to it. Not a good idea. This is not the way we are going to solve anything. And now we have started to do more work on vulnerability, to identify from before who are the people who are at higher risk. For that, we have understood over time that data has become information, data. We need to understand data. We need to have numbers. We cannot just say, oh, many people have died or many people are ill. Not good enough. So we need to have data, and to have good data over time, we have also realized that quality of data, I mean, I'm sure all of you are aware of this, quality of data, coverage of data. So you cannot have data from one bit of your village and none from the other villages. So you need coverage, you need good quality, and something which is extremely important, and that Stein will, one of my colleagues on the panel will deal with later on, is credibility. Right? Credibility. We know this now. We know that there is a lot of fake news around. There's a lot of disinformation. He will deal with it. And there is a very big question, getting bigger and bigger, on disinformation, on whether or not the data that you have is of good enough credibility. Is it credible? Does it come from sources that you think are important? I'm going to give you a brief, yeah, it's done already. Brief overview of how data has evolved for disasters and humanitarian crises over years. In 1983, so you know, you're going back a long way, the now defunct USAID decided, to their eternal credit, I must say, decided that data collection for disaster response from the US government was a very important aspect of their work. So they wanted to have systematic data on disasters, to which OFDA, at that time it was called OFDA, Office of whatever it is, Foreign Disaster Assistance. Which disasters in the world did they respond? Which disasters in the world did they respond? And so they started a database collecting information on those disasters. Thank you. Information on those disasters. And they started doing it in their own way. And I have a feeling, you know, after all, these are government officials. They have other things to do. And they did it. Then they contacted us. We were epidemiologists. We were doing work on data in different disasters and things, but in a very scattered way, and asked whether we would agree to take over this database that they are doing also in a rather random way, and whether or not we would put a scientific aspect to it and make it a much more systematic data set. This was in 1983. So we took it over and created something called MDAT, which some of you in this room may have used. It's a unique global data set. You let me know 5 minutes before. Yeah. Global data set. And we started collecting data systematically. Now, this brings me to something extremely important about data, extremely important, including what I will refer to in digitization, extremely important about data, and that is doing something systematically. It's a boring thing to talk about, and I'm not going to start you already this morning without your coffee or with your coffee to start going into nerdy details about systematic, but data has to be systematic. If it's not systematic, it cannot be used. And we will briefly touch upon why digitization is going to be very helpful in this systematic approach. Some of the aspects that you might want to think about is how do you define what data you want to include? For example, if you want to have clear and systematic definitions of what you're including in your data set. So, just because you have some information on a flood that has occurred in the northern part of your country, and you say, oh yes, there was a flood and there were many people who were died and children and so on and so forth. And so you have to be able to decide what disasters you include and what you don't include. And people will always have problems with your definitions. We've had unending problems of definitions. People don't agree with it. Who is dead, for example? Who is dead? Now that seems to be an obvious question, but it's not, because people will report dead and missing, or people will report dead. Those are two very important concepts, and the numbers will be very, very different. So you need to have definitions. Ages, you need to know whether your children are 0 to 18, or 0 to 16, or 0 to 14. So those kinds of issues. Now, to touch briefly on digitization and artificial intelligence. I mean, the truth is, this is the future. One might like it, not like it. One can be dépassé, as they say in French, by these concepts. But this is the future. That's the reality. So what does digitization bring us? What is the main thing that digitization brings us? That is interoperability. What has happened to MDAT? MDAT was a freestanding database, is a freestanding database. This is not good anymore. This will not work anymore. What will work is a cooperation between different kinds of data so that they can be brought together. And for that, if there is no digitization, we will never be able to compare data from one disaster to another, from one country to another, from one region to another. This comparison cannot be done. So that is one of the main reasons for moving into systematic digitization. Artificial intelligence. Now, artificial intelligence can be a huge advantage for disaster response. And that includes the ability to transform very complex data from meteorology, from epidemiology, from lost my train of thought, sorry, from different scientific disciplines, to bring them together in a common and usable format. So people, even district managers, or even lower down, village chiefs and so on and so forth, are able to understand which would otherwise be too complex. So that would be AI's. The only problem with AI, one has to remember, is that it is prone to errors. If you don't train your model well, AI can be prone to errors. I will quickly, am I doing? Yes. So some of the concrete applications of AI are mentioned over here. Logistics and supply chain is the first and the most obvious example. It's the most useful tool for improving logistics and supply chains. Predictive analytics, of course, to be able to identify where the high-risk people are, where the high-risk regions are. and data cleaning and analysis. We spend a lot of time in cleaning data right now, cleaning data, and that's a waste of time, waste of human resources, waste of money. So data cleaning and analysis can be done much faster by artificial intelligence. I mentioned these two points about AI and digitization. They are highly adopted right now, increasingly. So that's, again, as I said in the beginning, it's the reality, and high adoption rate and cost efficiency. It will reduce resources. Resources are tight, and it's getting tighter right now. So AI will help us to reduce our costs, and in fact is being adopted much wider. So looking to the future, there are 2 points I would like to make, and they're not mind-blowing points. They're quite simple points. One point is that if we want to apply in our own work, in a village level or a community level or a sub-regional, sub-national level, we must be able to start with very specific and simple questions to answer. So what is it that my organization wants to make simpler? For example, logistics and supply chain. This is not my area of work, but it's probably some of yours. Logistics. Can we have a simple question regarding what we could use digitization and artificial intelligence for? The second idea, which I think is probably the idea of the future and in the near future, is that there is no effective application of AI and digitization without a concept of coalitions of data suppliers. So in other words, we have to work towards no longer freestanding data sets in meteorology, in epidemiology, in social and economic issues. They have to be a coalition. We have to work together. We have to merge. We have to work together to be able to do something which is more inclusive and more joined up. And that is possible if we approach it with the tools. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Debbie. So I just want to pose a question to the audience to respond to in Pigeonhole, if possible. So how many of you work with data systems in your disaster response or resilience work, if you are from that sector? And how many of you have encountered quality issues that affected your programming? So that's a question that I pose to all of you. So Debbie has given us a clear picture of the data landscape, both the possibilities and the gaps. Now let's talk about how AI solutions should be designed. I'm pleased to introduce my colleague Stein Abers, a humanitarian consultant specializing in information and disinformation in crisis settings. Most recently, Stein supported civil society in Sudan in countering disinformation campaigns undermining some humanitarian work. Stein will show us what meaningful co-design looks like and what responsible AI means in crisis settings. Stein, over to you.
Good morning, and I'll go to the next slide. That's me, former journalist turned humanitarian. I'm aware that my background is in humanitarian crisis, and that my case study that I'm going to present today is from Sudan. But I hope in 10 minutes I can show how it applies to a lot of the work that we do. I also would like to add that Sudan is absolutely a battlefield where a lot of approaches are being tested over the last couple of years and that have been applied outside of Sudan. It's really one of the global battlefields when it comes to, and that is indeed my expertise, mis and disinformation and how it's deliberately being used to undermine a lot of the efforts of everybody here in the room as well. The case study I'm talking about is based on previous work that we did in Sudan with what they call their mutual aid group. So we're talking about a wide variety of civil society actors, volunteers, NGOs, local media, who are doing their utter best to serve people, to make sure that services are there and that they reach the people who need it most. While at the same time, there are relentless campaigns that often is being referred to as coordinated inauthentic behavior online, to undermine those efforts in a way to also win eventually the war, and through pushing narratives by releasing armies of bots, and really trying to divert and confuse and undermine not just the efforts of the civil society, government, but also of the people, right, who are also exposed to the same information and disinformation campaigns. The ambition of the CDAC network, who I was the project coordinator for in that project, is always to involve the community. And while some people who have worked with AI already are familiar with human in the loop, I think the ambition that we articulate is to bring the community in the loop. That's what I'm going to talk about. Now, there's something funny about artificial intelligence, right? Like if we all think about it, it really produces results. So if you want like a turtle on a skateboard and you ask AI, it will produce a turtle on a skateboard. But if somebody else wants an elephant on a skateboard, poof, elephant on a skateboard, no problem. The problem that I see and that we've seen there is that if you want to have meaningful participation, you want to see what happens between input and output. You want to be motivated by seeing that your input results in a different output. Now, if you do that as an individual, you might have fun with ChatGPT or one of the others. If you do that on a community level, that gets a lot more complicated because, of course, we talk about voice. I heard that yesterday also, the speech of the president. But voice means different voices, right? It means different people. It means different priorities. And I'm not just talking about different communities with different ethnic or religious background. I mean, a logistic person has different needs than a community engagement person. I think a media outlet has a different goal than a service provider. And so all those different prompts will result different outputs, and you get, again, the very scattered image that an information ecosystem today looks like. So how do we streamline that a little bit? I think it's important, that's one of the first lessons that I want to share, is that we stop talking about AI as one thing, and that we start talking about the tasks that we want to do, and that we talk about the process that we go through, and that indeed that we bring in a community at every single level. Right? One lesson learned as a result is that AI is not fast. Right? Like, yes, that prompt and that result might be there in a few seconds, but that's what free off-the-shelf AI does for you. If you want to control what is happening, if you want to really think about what you need and then design a process, teaching those models, right? Designing models, agreeing on categories, that takes time, right? And the AI models need time to understand the difference between, let's say, and this is a very concrete example, we had a technical partner who had experience in political analysis. They were interested in who did it and why, right? Those are the key questions for a political analysis. Who's behind it and what are their reasons? If you're in the humanitarian field, and I would argue also in development, you're actually more interested in what are people talking about and what could be potentially the impact of the campaigns that we see online. You're thinking about the way forward. Now, to teach a model not to predict the past, which is what a lot of AI still does, they use data and they start predicting the past, and hopefully that has a sort of reference to the future. To teach it something about what might happen next, impact, early warning, that is a lot more complicated. And I would argue there is also a cultural or subcultural element to it. The AI world is full of confident middle-aged men. Sorry, that's just the reality. And they are in a very competitive business, and their confidence is what makes them survive, right? And so they produce results and they say 90% certain this will happen. Now, if you're in our business, especially also in humanitarian business, where do no harm is one of the main principles, you want to have caution, right? You want to bring in uncertainty in those results. And so to create a model that, and that's why I use this very silly graph that I just took from the internet and then adapted a little bit. It's easier to go back with data, right? Like the historical data. It's much harder to develop something that AI then will inform your decision-making. Are we going to set up services in a certain spot, or is it too dangerous there, right? What if we place it to another location? Will people come? Like, those are really tough decisions that people have to make day in, day out in Sudan and probably elsewhere. And you want to present those results, the turtle on the skateboard, with a level of uncertainty, with a level of caution. That's not in the culture of AI, I would say, right, in that world. And so to bring in people, communities, all across that process, and one of the things that we did in that project, and it's just an example, is to start separating those results out in data categorization, data presentation, and analysis, so that at least different people, remember, media, logistics, service providers, can use the data and do their own analysis, right? That we don't present something as a certainty and as one result of a lot of data analysis, but that we share the data in a certain way, certain categorization, so that people can actually use their own brain. Yeah, I would argue, never a bad thing. And then maybe inform their decision-making inside the organization. So these are some of the reports. One of the things that I was also interesting that for the first time, and I've been working on mis and disinformation since 2014, long before the president in the US was elected. And it allowed us to wait, right? We've done a lot of mis and disinformation work based on content. What this AI now really does, and I'm a skeptic, I'm going to admit it, is that because you can crunch so much data, you can weigh it. And what you can't read probably, but I want to tell you, is that we developed a model that would show how much of the information that is circulating online is actually produced by humans, is pushed by humans and not bots. How much has it entered a different network? Because you can see the clustering, and at some point, indeed, bots are talking to bots, right? That's the sort of maybe one stage. Once it starts entering human networks, that's a different weight, right? Like it means the reach of that information has, gone beyond the inauthentic networks. And then you can start using that in decision-making as well. Rather than really as a sort of whack-a-mole, chasing after every piece of content, you can look at phenomenon, narratives, and see the weighing will allow you to make a better assessment whether you should respond to it or ignore it. A lot more to be said, but I guess maybe for 10 minutes, this is my food for thought for this room. That's it.
Thank you so much, Stein, for a really thought-provocative 10 minutes. I think there's a lot for us to reflect on as we use AI more and more in our day-to-day lives. So we now understand the data landscape, thanks to Debbie, and the co-design principles, and in terms of misinformation, disinformation, and how the community can be engaged to provide better quality data. And now we need to see how this translates into anticipatory action at the community level. So the next question is, can we use AI to predict disasters so that communities and governments can anticipate action before disaster strikes? So to explore this, I'm pleased to introduce my colleague Takeshi Kamino, chairperson of ADRRN. He leads ADRRN strategic direction and the Tokyo Innovation Hub. And he will be bringing critical community, civil society perspectives to this discussion. Takeshi, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. It's a nice sunny day again in Samarkand. So Stein was also talking about more of a conflict setting, and I want to bring us to more nature-induced disaster setting, how data and potential for artificial intelligence can be used for us. In our line of work, we do emergency response, that's humanitarian. We also do development, like disaster risk reduction. We also contribute to peace building, right? And also climate adaptation. And then we call them nexus, triple nexus. So we think about humanitarian, also development, peace, as well as the climate adaptation. Now, from our experience, there are key elements that's required to make sure that we implement this triple nexus plus. One is local leadership. The second is the social cohesion. And the third is quite critical, and that's very relevant to our discussion today, is proactive risk management. And fourth is institutional alignment, and the fifth is the evidence-based accountability. Now, when we take a look at this proactive risk management, the prerequisite to do this, first is to understand the risk. If you don't understand the risk, there's no way you can mitigate your risk, right? Understanding the risk comes first. Yeah, and in order to understand the risk, there's always a threshold of risk. I think each of you also do like an annual health checkup, and you probably have your own sort of indicator of, I need to be aware of this, this indicator, right? The same thing goes to a disaster in the community. So there's always a certain threshold to what we need to look for. For example, this is an example from Japan in a place called Nara Prefecture. And it's a case of one type of landslide called a deep-seated landslide. So landslide have different types, yeah? In nutshell, there's this surface collapse. That's more of a like a sudden collapse. There's another type called a deep-seated landslide, which is the landslide phenomenon that happens from deep within. So it's more destructive. When we take a look at the rainfall pattern that when this disaster has been happened, we look at the hourly rainfall as well as the accumulative rainfall. For this type of landslide, accumulative rainfall is more important to look at. And when you see that red area where disaster occurred, that's how much of the accumulated rainfall that seeped into underground, which led to this deep-seated landslide to happen. Which means that for this landslide, this was the threshold. Okay? In each of our location, in each of our settlement, there's always a threshold of risk. That's something important to remember. You talk about flooding, you talk about landslide, you talk about drought, there's always that threshold when the hazard becomes a disaster. Okay? That we know from our experience. And so that's why we do this rainfall analysis. And this concept called the critical line differentiates safe rainfall pattern to a dangerous rainfall pattern, right? Not every rainfall is dangerous. Rainfall is actually a great thing to have, yeah, for your agriculture, it's important. But some rainfall patterns produce a disaster event. And those are the rainfall patterns we need to look out for, yeah? And we call this a critical line. And this critical line is actually used for early warning and early action. Municipalities in Japan does hundreds of these analysis of the past disasters to determine when shall we warn community to evacuate early, you know? So that notion of when, not only where is dangerous, but when it becomes dangerous is critical for early warning and early action. Japan has tens of thousands of these sensors, rainfall observatories, you know, throughout our country. Every 10 minutes we measure. All the measurements you can see online. I can see it from here in Samarkand. All the rainfall measurement of anywhere in Japan, every 10 minutes. Does all the country have that capacity? No, right? So data gap is significant. However, this is something you want to use. If you work on disaster management, and if you work on disasters such as such as flooding or landslides, for example, this is a great tool to use. It's called the Global Rainfall Watch by Japanese space agency called JAXA. They work with NASA on this project. What it does is that, the satellite has these radars, right? With radar, they calculate how much of the rainfall that there is. All over the world, every hour, you can get this data of the rainfall since about the year 2000. So let's say a disaster happened, say, on December 22nd in 2014 in one village in Indonesia. I can go to this site and download that particular date, or maybe from 3 days ago to about 3 days later. Hourly rainfall data can be obtained at my fingertip. Yeah, it's a slightly different from the on-the-ground observation, but it's still good enough to do that analysis for every type of rainfall-induced disasters. This is one example of Indonesia. In 2021, they had this cyclone called Cyclone Seroja, quite a devastating cyclone that happened in the eastern part of Indonesia, in NTT province. But when we take a look at when exactly a disaster event started to emerge with that disaster, it was the April 4th, around midnight in 2021. That's critical. That's critical. Then we take a look at what was the rainfall pattern at that time. Then, you good? Yeah, okay. Then we're able to see what's the threshold. When does this hazard, heavy rainfall hazard, becomes a disaster in this location? That's where it becomes a disaster, okay? So in a way, that's a threshold. So when we think about when do we need to warn people to evacuate, how much time do they need to evacuate? 4 hours, 5 hours, minimum? Then we can draw that line, say this is a minimum line of when you need to start the early evacuation. Just like that, we can determine this is the first warning line, this is a second warning line, and this is the final warning line. That's how the disaster early warning and early action system is set up in Japan, for example. Similar type of analysis can be done by anyone in any country now because of the tools that we have. Those of you who work on disaster management in Uzbekistan, you can do that from today. We can train you how to do this as well. It's very easy. Once you know, you can do it for free. Yep, so this is my last slide. So that's how the data can be used. But data needs to link to action. Sometimes with early warning for all initiative, for example, we focus a lot on capturing that data. Lots of like Doppler radar system is being purchased with loans, for example. That happens, right? That's important. But only data does not lead to action. Data always needs to lead to action. In order for that to happen, there are different steps. People need to comprehend what this data is saying, right? And there's a decision-making point, as Stin was also saying in his presentation, there's a decision-making point by the community members. Okay, this is dangerous for me. I need to act, yeah? That decision needs to be prompted by this data analysis and the risk communication. We have lots of these data available, just like the one I showed you from JAXA's Global Rainfall Watch. Globally, we have this data available now, but that is not being used to prompt these early action at the moment. This is where I think AI has tremendous opportunity and potential, because all these vast data that's very difficult for everyone to analyze. Well, it's easy to analyze, but not everyone's doing it. We can have these machines to do this analysis and figure out what's the critical line for these disasters for a certain location. As I said, threshold is always there for any type of disaster. It's always important. So the essential thing is for the communities to understand what's the threshold for you in your community. Not everyone understands that yet, but we need to make sure that everyone understands that. That's how a resilient movement is being built in our region. So I'll stop there. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Takeshi. So we've heard about data quality from Debbie, co-design principles from Stein, and early warning systems from Takeshi. Now let's see AI in action. Joining us online now is Joseph Sosi, humanitarian content and social media advisor for the International Rescue Committee. Joseph leads high-quality, user-centered editorial work and program design that helps crisis-affected communities access reliable, actionable information. Joseph will take us through some concrete glimpses of how AI is being used in emergencies right now, with emphasis on responsive and safe information services. Joseph, I'm passing it over to you. Thank you. Sound check. Do you want to? We can't hear you, Joseph.
No, we can't hear him. He's frozen.
Oh, that's better. You can hear me now.
Yeah, we can hear you now. Good, thank you. This is all. Okay.
Is that right?
Joseph, Kathy will be moving the slides for you, so you can just cue her. Thank you.
You confirm if I can be heard, then I'll go ahead.
All right, so we're just gonna sort out the IT, Joseph.
Yes,
Hybrid
so
sessions
that's
are
me.
always
Yeah.
Over
Content
to you,
and social
Joseph.
media
Yeah.
advisor.
Good.
I'll be taking you through
Okay.
the IRC's signpost programming approach. Next slide, please, Asina.
I think you can go, Joseph. You can start. Just the IT is a bit is settling in, so just take your time. Yeah,
Set
thank you.
up in 2015 by the IRC with the overall idea of bridging the gap between what crisis responders organizations feel needs to be delivered as information to communities versus what the communities actually need as responsive information. And since 2015, we've had signpost programs in different countries with across more than 30 countries and in 25 languages, reaching about 20 million users. And this has been achieved through two-way communication, mostly to mean these channels are set up in a manner that communities are able to ask questions and they get responses almost instantly from, but also mostly from the local or from the affected communities. So that is what basically signpost does. Local organizations or responders agencies and even after to support recovery of the communities. And that has been done through what I termed as the two-way communication channels. Important note is in all the setups that we had for signpost programming, the channels are brought in after assessment of the community information needs to identify what are the community's preferred channels, what are the community's most pressing information needs during emergencies. And in some cases, it's done in a very rapid way to help sort of set up these channels as a way of complementing existing approaches that organizations would ordinarily use to deliver information, maybe using community radio, megaphones. So these digital channels are brought in to complement existing channels. Through the signpost approach, the IRC has gotten recognition. Like in 2023, we had the UN SDG Action Award 1. And then in 2024, the EU also so that my internet does not break. Yeah, I hope it gets better. Yes, so in 2024, we got the European Prize for Humanitarian Innovation, the very first of its kind for Signpost, for the innovations that support recognition for the innovation as having supported communities that Am I still
Joseph,
connected?
can you hear us?
I can be heard. Yes. So in 2024, we had the European Prize for Humanitarian Innovation for supporting communities on the move, to mean people that have been affected by crisis who are able to access channels and then received information that enabled them to make decisions about their daily lives. And these information products are usually packaged through a centralized website that supports direct access to the community members who have access to smartphones and internet connectivity, but also they're also used as a reference point for frontline responders during emergencies. Other than the websites, then this Signpost program also works directly with social media platforms such as Facebook, WhatsApp, to deliver the information to affected communities. Next. And then, so how Signpost is able to support disaster response. The fact that the technology that supports Signpost programming is available for rapid deployment, to mean if there's an emergency in any setting, Signpost programming is able to sort of deploy the channels really quick, and it's able to pick real-time information needs from the community members. While, for example, there could be flood data that maybe is pointing to heavy rainfall that could lead to displacement, that is information you would want to deliver to the communities, but the questions from the community members would also help inform what other information gaps you will need to address. Maybe people want to know where to move to. Then, so through the interactions with the community members through these channels, we are able to enable proactive crisis response. And it can also help plug into resources like the Google Flood Hub data to inform patterns maybe on rainfall, so that the design of disaster warning messaging can be informed by actual data like the previous presenter has just demonstrated earlier. Next slide, please. So Signpost has evolved over time due to like resource constraints to try and also plug in AI to support the response to the community members, as you will see in a demonstration shortly. So how it comes in as a responsible AI deployment approach is the fact that when high-risk cases come up from the interactions with communities, maybe on WhatsApp or Facebook, the AI model, the Signpost AI model, has been trained to identify urgent or these high-risk cases and flag them for human intervention, and also just prioritizing or informing teams to prioritize these high-risk cases. So it sort of flags high-risk cases. It could be a case of violence or gender-based violence, or maybe someone is suicidal. It sort of flags those cases for urgent intervention by human moderators. And then the way it is designed is that it helps to categorize the information needs or the community needs as they emerge from conversations from the community. So it could be you messaging that around moving to a safer location. Then you see these people starting to mention other risks, maybe a disease outbreak. They would send photos or voice recordings that demonstrate a certain outbreak or a certain situation, maybe loss of documentation during a flood. So those information needs are categorized to inform resource allocation and to also inform the responders of this disaster on what needs more attention to the community. So this AI does not replace the involvement of humans or the involvement of community members in delivery of information services, but it reinforces, because it's designed to empower the communities, the responders, to be able to receive or produce accurate and timely information that is delivered to the communities. So we use an approach called a human in the loop, like Stein mentioned earlier, which means if it's a high-risk case, then the AI is not able to directly respond to these users, but then it flags or escalates this issue so that a human is actually able to respond to the issue. The other way to look at how we support with responsible AI deployment is the fact that it has been trained to be humble, in that if it has a gap in its knowledge, if Signpost AI does not have the information required to respond, then it is able to escalate that to a human, meaning it knows what it doesn't know, and it's able to hand over that to a human to respond. Other cases of escalation other than that is when a human asks this AI tool to sort of speak to a human. So this is a user that prefers not to engage the AI tool, but then prefers to be supported directly by a human. So it has those capabilities, and that is what we see as responsible AI deployment. What you're seeing on screen now is a demonstration on how Signpost AI works. If you can play that video, then I'll. So this is a user. She's Jahel, and she has traveled through El Salvador, through Mexico to the US, and with her son, she's trying to find shelter or accommodation. So she's sending in a message saying, I'm Jahel with my son. We are in this difficult situation. We do not have accommodation. How can we get support? And she even says, it's only for my child. If my child can get accommodation, I'll be fine. And Signpost AI received this message, and it's able to sort of source for a service provider that is able to provide shelter for minors. And it responds here saying there's a center called YMCA. It provides this user with contact information, the location, what she needs to carry with herself if they're like requirement informations, and the timing for service provision. And then she's able to take up that as supportive information that she's able to use then to get accommodation for her child. So there will be a QR code projected for you to get to see how Signpost AI in action in different setups. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joseph. Kathy, do you want to take back the QR code for colleagues to kind of take a snapshot of that? So this signpost application is available in different countries around the world in different languages, and it's context specific, and it's something that really is in action as we speak. Millions of people around the world that are in need during disaster preparedness and response, they are using this as a tool to basically make informed decisions as they are responding to a crisis. Policymakers are also using this as a tool to basically share emergency contact information and details around emergency responses. So it really is a practical tool which is being applied as we speak. And I hope that the discussions that we've progressed over the past hour has helped, has been able to be brought to a consolidation through this demonstration of how AI can be used for disaster resilience and response. So now I would like to request our ADB colleague Heidi Dupé, to Unit Head of NGO and Civil Society Center, to come up and introduce our ADB colleague Bridget, who's online, to kind of for the next to share her reflections in the next session. Thank you.
Thank you. So my colleague from the disaster risk management team, Brigitte, is linking in from ADB headquarters, and we also have a few other ADB colleagues who are also online. So if there is a need for, other expertise, I think we've invited a few others to join. So Brigitte, over to you for the reflection.
Just before, Bridget, I have a probing question for you. Thank you so much, Heidi, for the intro. So in terms of, Bridget, you've heard the overall of the past hour, different colleagues speaking through the phases of the quality data, and then the community engagement in data collection, and then the data input, and also how in action, how AI can really help communities respond to a crisis. So considering this, can you share your perspectives that resonates with you most in terms of your background in disaster financing, linking in the community perspective and also the policy perspective? Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me in this very interesting panel, and it was a rich set of presentations. And what I really found particularly that it's not about AI as a technology, but it's how can we serve and enhance the real decision problems that communities and governments face. So really from my, ADB's perspective, maybe 3 implications and takeaway points linking to your question. It's first the value of technology and AI really depends on how it improves the real decisions. So where do we invest? Who's most at risk or impacted? Real-time data, when to trigger anticipatory action, to move quickly and to reach people affected. And secondly, community-based data is there to really add on the blind spots and additional information that is collected elsewhere. So linking to the coalition of data, that's where we started, to really understand the local exposure vulnerabilities, but also learning about misinformation that was there and how this can be brought in at scale, which was what Joseph was sharing. And underlying is really the strong governance and trust element. So you already mentioned the responsible use of AI and the data, as well as the human in the loop. And I think this clear escalation protocols and human oversight is important. And thirdly, and where ADB can add value is really by connecting all of these approaches to government system and investment operations, where we, for example, work on early warning or anticipatory action, climate adaptation finance, but also disaster risk financing and anticipatory action, linking early warning and social protection schemes, as well as post-disaster response systems. And this is an opportunity not to just invest into technology, but also building that trusted information and decision support infrastructure that links the community insights, government system, and the financing instruments. And so this is really the key takeaway from my say, that technology can support and enable better decisions and strengthen the accountability of affected communities to then have maybe faster and better action. Yes, it will take time to develop these AI tools, as I mentioned, but once they are in place, we hopefully will be there faster to support. So with that, and in the interest of time, I thank you again for having the opportunity to share.
Thank you so much, but really appreciate it. So I just want to summarize before going to Q&As. We have a few questions which have come online, and also we'll give an opportunity to the audience to ask questions. But I've kind of summed up 3 key takeaways from today's discussion, and please, audience, also add if I've missed anything. So number 1 is data quality matters as much as quantity, and Debbie showed us that policy is only as good as the data behind it. And the second one is technology enables, but doesn't replace. So Stein, Takeshi, and Joseph demonstrated that AI must be co-designed with communities who stay in control. And number 3, Bridget has come in nicely summarizing the session and how the partnership part is essential. And so Bridget has shared how communities' data can inform financing, but we do need civil society's trust and ground level knowledge to bridge local and national systems. So this is basically, like, in a nutshell, that's what I have gathered from today's panel. And I would like to, before going online, I would like to check if anybody in the audience would like to pose any questions to our colleagues online or our colleagues present in the panel. And my colleague Kathy of my RC will support with handing around the mic. Thank you. If you could please introduce yourself and then ask the question directly to the
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
this session. My name is Tolikan Ismailova. I am director of Human Rights Movement One World Kyrgyzstan. And I remember we focus for early warning housing system because we have mountainous country and we have different risk of disaster. And that's why this session very unique and will give opportunity local leaders, especially women leaders, youth movement, to adapt this very nice strategy to our work. And I have only one question. Please, do you have strategy, educate or give information about this early warning system, so digital security for our government structure, for our deputies, MPs, because without the political will, it's difficult to describe our map of disaster and risk. And that's why we need your support to educate our officials also, MP. And I think it's very important session because our local people say it's localization and also localization from local to global. And thank you so much. I will give questions later maybe, but I want to say thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. So I want to request Takeshi to respond to this question. And then we have another question from the floor.
Anytime. As ADRN, we truly believe that we need to create this resilience movement. And in order to do that, it's beyond us, it's beyond me, you know. I think everyone needs to have this resilient decisions embedded in their daily lives. If we can assist you in doing that with your constituencies in a mountainous region in Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, anytime. So let's do we can do webinars together, we can do trainings together. We will transfer everything we know about all this to you. Yes. So, yeah.
Thank you, Takeshi. Kathy? Okay.
Hello, everyone. My name is Anna. I'm from Kyrgyzstan too. From External Aid Monitoring Group for Kyrgyzstan. And my question is how deeply we can trust data processing with the help of AI? Or maybe we can use different AIs and compare the results. And there is some kind of legal assessment to draw some conclusion and statements.
Okay. I will request Dine to respond to this. Thank you.
Thank you.
My first answer is don't trust it, right? Like genuinely, which doesn't mean that it can be valuable and contribute to your own analysis and decision making, but please don't switch off your brain, right? So I think a good, healthy level of distrust is absolutely needed. And that's why it's more what I try to convey is and didn't get into the details of it, in every step of the way, right? And it's not just that communities have ground data and that therefore they can input some. No. They have concerns, they have questions. And if we want to have trust in the outputs, right? You need to have transparency, but you also need to have control. You need to feel like I've been able to see what happened. That's the transparency part. But also when I didn't feel like it was going in the right direction, I want to rethink, go back to the drawing table and do it again. That's why I want to really emphasize that AI, there is something about it that feels very fast, but you have to really maybe slow it down a little bit. And so some healthy level of distrust, I think, is recommendable.
Heidi, over to you.
I don't have much to say, but I actually have a colleague from our IT department here. I'd like to recognize Mark Lepage, who's actually been very instrumental in helping ADB to actually learn more about digital things. And he's been doing a lot of work with staff, ADB staff, and he's actually from the innovation and, the sandbox group. So here you go, Mark.
Yeah. Do you want to give him the speaker? Yeah.
Sorry, I'll take the floor very quickly. Thanks, Heidi and colleagues. Yes, Mark with the ADB IT department. We've worked on this platform that Brigitte mentioned to look at the risk and how AI can play a role in that. Stein, totally agree with you. We need to use AI in a very reasonable way. So we've not released this platform for external. For now, it's only available to ADB staff. It only uses data coming from ADB vetted project data sources, all this that have been curated. It's not using anything else. But we know at the same time that, like you were saying, there's huge potential. So how do we find the right balance between something that is curated, validated, etc., but that can provide the right service. Sort of on the side, ADB is pushing for digital public goods. We've joined the Digital Public Good Alliance recently, and one of the things we're currently doing is how can we have AI systems that are digital public good, because there's a tension in the two terms. Because if you're looking at open data, open model, open weight, open system, there's hardly any, in fact, that fits that criteria. So how do you reconcile this? It's an ongoing discussion, but we're keen to participate in those and share our experience. But thank you, colleague, and thanks, Heidi, for the opportunity. Sorry, I'm giving you back the mic.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Would you like to introduce yourself and then ask the question?
Yes.
Thank you.
My name is Yuji Yamashita. I lead the project called ASEAN Plus 3. Plus 3 means Japan, Korea, China for disaster risk finance. So in that sense, I closely work with my colleagues like Brigitte. My question is, I fully understand data and AI are so powerful for disaster risk management finance, but I find some dilemma in that disaster have some local context. For instance, disasters in Japan and Indonesia are quite different. So in that sense, thresholds might be different. However, if we want to address disaster risk issues collectively in the region or globally, maybe we need to consider standardization of, for instance, a definition of disasters. Also, maybe we want to use same AI engines for across regions. So how we can make good balance in local context and regional or global context would be a very big challenge. So I want to have views from panelists. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. And I would like to, I think this is a response that we could get from Stein and from Debbie. So Debbie, if you could start it off and then David to Stein, yeah.
Thank you. I think that the definition issue, which I raised when I spoke, is an extremely critical and central problem. It's central not only at the global or regional level to be able to compare data between countries, but it is also absolutely central within a country, because the difference in definitions, even what the example that you raised, definition of what is a disaster. Does that a disaster, is it when 500 people are affected, or is it 1,000 people, or is it 80,000 people? So what is a disaster? If there is no agreement on basic principles of data on the impact of disasters, there will never be any kind of cooperation or data transfer issues. So I think that's a very, very critical point. And I think it is not just what is a disaster, but as I gave an example, what is a dead? Who is dead? You know, is somebody who's dead because he would have died anyway during the time of the disaster? Or is it a dead which is directly a result of the disaster? So those things are absolutely critical. Unfortunately, sir, it's an extremely boring, it really is, it's extremely boring topic to say that we have to make definitions which countries agree on. And that is the kind of approach that agencies, institutions like the Asian Development Bank should be responsible for bringing forward, because they have the mandate and the governmental, I don't know what the
position, influence.
Yes. So they are the ones who have to lead this and have common definitions set up. Yeah.
Thank you, Stein. Over to you.
I think I'm going to go against the grain a little bit here. A lot of the work that I've been doing in the last couple of years is on trust, and on trust on the kind of information that a lot of the people in the room are providing to communities. I've always worked with communities. One of the big challenges that we all face is the trust deficit. I think we're all aware of that. And we think we can double down on the accuracy of our information and to solve it. And I don't think that's true, right? I think a big element is that people feel powerless, that decisions are being made for them, and that the information they get as much as it might be reliable, is decided for them, right? And so here's something that I think is a challenge with AI. Once again, it will centralize things. It will put the power of deciding what a disaster is or what a death is or in the hands of a very few, right? And while there might be very smart people involved in then streamlining all of that happens in the rooms here, right, in the headquarters, and people are being given information that they don't know if they want to trust, right? And so I would really be interested in how we can use AI, putting it in the hands of those communities and actually build up from there. And actually, to some extent, give up control, right? Like hand it over and let people decide what is important to them. Yeah, is this is this a big disaster or is this a small disaster, right? Is this something they want to act upon or is this something that they, have generations of experience to just, let it come and then rebuild maybe their houses or their livelihood, etc. And so I really want us to, if the answer is centralized, I think we might widen the gap of trust again and yet again, right?
Thank you. Thank you, Stein. Thank you, Heidi.
I actually have a concern, actually. My phone is so full of apps. And I'm like, can we just, like now communication is fragmented, right? We have WhatsApp, we have Viber, we have Telegram, we have Signal, we have a whole host of things. And I'm like, if I want to reach somebody, what's the one app that I can use to reach everyone? And I think in an emergency, we need one app. We need, each country needs one system. And that system can be, as Mark said, like open source or something that is input by everyone. Maybe it may have a community specific flavor where community add information and data there. And it could be a government system for emergency response, right? That could be, has its own provincial flavor. And then communities and provincial leaders add the information to it so that it can be used, right? But with so many, it really confuses and fragment the communication rather than bringing things together. That's my fear. Because right now my phone is saying heavy, no memory.
Heidi, in response to your question, IRC signpost tool that does exactly that. It works with the systems available in that country. And it connects directly with where there are with civil society organizations and government are in control. It works with the governments and the government institutes at the local level to basically use their data in a way that is accessible to the community. So exactly that's the aim, to kind of bring all of the information from different platforms, different agencies into one place so that people can kind of quickly log in somewhere or go to a MODMR, disaster management and relief website and click, and then they will find out the information that they need to. So that's exactly what we are doing with signposts. And obviously there is work in progress. There's more that can be done over a period of time to bring more efficiency, but that is the aim, to kind of channelize information through like a single channel. We have 3 more questions and we don't have much time left. So I'm going to hand over to our colleague. Yeah, thank you. If you would introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Ferdinand Gamboa. I'm from Free Balance, implementing financial information systems for public sector globally. My question is probably related to policymaking. So how can AI-driven response spending be made auditable and transparent, especially knowing that decisions are made algorithmically?
Thank you so much. This is a question that I would request Bridget, if you're online, if you'd like to take a stab at.
Yes, thank you. I'm not necessarily the right person to talk about auditing, etc. But I think with additional data points and trusted information, we can also link to, impact measurements, etc., and follow the financing through. So just an example that ADB is also working on, like blockchain information, to exactly look into how to monitor the financing and accountability, if I understand your question correctly. So how can we use that? And I think we are moving towards that, and there are a couple of projects in ADB working on that as well?
I can augment Brigitte answer there. Colleagues in the public financial management team just launched a program that they're doing for Ministry of Finance on public financial management accountability. And they roll out the first training 2 weeks ago in Manila for Southeast Asian countries, and Ministry of Finance and the budget people came to the training. And there was a whole day of the role of civil society in helping to monitor spendings and budgets and things like that. So it was a really rich discussion with the Southeast Asian government. I think the colleagues from the governance and public financial management team has plans to roll out to different regions, the training for Ministry of Finance and Ministry, budget and the anti-corruption unit of government. So, working with government to build capacity on monitoring and tracing budgets and accountability, because in the end, they know that government trust is really important for its people, so that government can mobilize revenue and tax. People are willing to give tax if they know that the money is used wisely, and that there is accountability and transparency. And also in the end, it's the predictability of how the resources are used, and that builds trust for the country and the people and the government, and also for investors, right? So this is what our colleagues in the PFM team are doing, and more will come in this area.
Thank you so much, Heidi. Since you have the mic on you, I would like divert to an online question which has come through. So colleagues have asked, how can smaller civil society organizations meaningfully engage with institutions like ADB in shaping data-driven resilience investments?
We have knowledge learning events that we do regularly. Last year was the first year we do at the annual meeting, we have one session, but we also have another one in September. And I think Takeshi was part of that discussion. And so smaller groups can also partner with bigger NGOs, bigger groups. So this event is actually for groups to network with each other and coordinate. I think colleagues from Kyrgyzstan, you can connect with Takeshi and the work that they do. And if you can also email us directly, ADB. We have civilsociety@adb.org. And then we will meet with you, discuss with you, and then find opportunities for you to engage with us on the knowledge and learning area. Also, our country office has resident mission office, and each office has a focal. And here we have Farusa, my colleague. She's here from the Tashkent office. So we actually have engagement with civil society. If you have good ideas, you want to engage with us, you look for our focal, propose the idea, and they propose to us. So you want to say anything, Farusa?
Yeah, I suggest, maybe, Heidi, I don't know, I'm not sure if we have the focal contacts in our NGOC.
It's on the website. Yeah. So if you look for ADB's NGO and Civil Society Center, on the website, we have a drop-down list for the country and the name. And you can reach out to our colleagues who's been trained by us to connect with civil society and work with civil society.
I'll just quickly summarize in Russian. В каждом офисе, вот как Хайди сказала, есть представитель в этом самом офисе, в представительстве. И этот список есть в Кыргызстане, в Таджикистане, в каждой стране. Вы можете посмотреть, кто, и тоже выйти напрямую. Спасибо.
Thank you so much. So we have 5 minutes left, and we have 2 questions. So we're going to take both questions together, and then we're going to come to the panel for responses. Thank you.
Добрый день всем. Меня зовут Людмила, и я с Казахстана, город Алма-Аты. И я солидарна с коллегой из Кыргызстана. Действительно, мы проживаем в предгорной зоне, и для нас эта проблема схода грунта, оползней очень актуальна. И предложение представителей из Японии Такеши для нас очень приятно слышать. Мы готовы к обучению и готовы к сотрудничеству. Обучить, и мы тоже хотим изучать и предотвращать эти трагедии и знать точку критичности. Спасибо.
Yeah, she's also from Kyrgyzstan, and then she's also looking for the opportunity for knowledge sharing events or some trainings, because Kyrgyzstan is also like a disaster prone country. And then, so that's why these kind of trainings and some targeted trainings will be helpful for them as well. Yeah.
That's good. Thank you. Yeah.
После сессии он говорит, давайте вы вместе сядете, и вы обменяетесь контактами, он вам немножко более детально. Только и по-японски, и по-английски говорит, если что, помощь, может быть, там кто-то поможет, да, вот коллеги.
Yeah. So this will be our last question from our audience.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm director of Center of Analysis of Democratic Processing in Uzbekistan. This is a think tank. Thank you for a very interesting presentation. Let me introduce my very shortly speech in Russia. Okay? Уважаемые друзья, в качестве, может быть, представителя Узбекистана, в качестве представителя Самарканда, я хочу сегодня поздравить одного хорошего человека. Сегодня у этого человека день рождения.
Dear guest, we want to congratulate the amazing person today, because today is your birthday.
Это прекрасная Наталья из Узбекистана. Ей сегодня исполняется 65 лет.
It's an amazing Natalia from Uzbekistan. Today is your anniversary, 65 years old.
И от имени нашего центра, при присутствии наших гостей, давайте ей предоставим этот подарок. Наталья, желаем вам всего самого хорошего, долгих лет жизни, и вы все время, чтобы были вот такой вот очень прекрасно хорошей женщиной. Спасибо.
And from our center in all colleges, we want to give the gift and wish all the best.
Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. Okay. And we're honored that we could facilitate this in this panel. Thank you so much. Thank you. This is a great opportunity. Thank you. Yes, yes. That's okay. Okay, thank you, everyone. We have 2 minutes left, and I really wanted to go back to the audience for a couple of lines each, which we may not have the chance to now do. So, but if you want to share any quick reflections, and then we've got to finish in a couple of minutes, so we could come back to you afterwards, if that's okay.
Огромное спасибо, я благодарна Аллаху, прежде всего то, что сегодня в такой день я нахожусь среди вас. Это значит, я не имею права сидеть в сторонке, я должна работать, я буду работать, я хочу работать. Огромное спасибо.
Oh, thank you.
And we want to thank you that today and Thursday we're surrounding with colleges.
Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Okay, so I would say there's not time to have a minute reflection, but a line each from your final takeaways from the panels. If we could start from online, Bridget, if you want to kind of just vary in a line or two, any final reflections?
I think I connect with what Heidi said, that, you know, we are here to be reached out to and collaborate. So please do so. And happy to engage on all the topics that have been raised, and especially to enhance decision-making for disaster preparedness, financing and response. So looking forward to the next steps.
Thank you, thank you. I'm going to go backwards. So Joseph, do you have any reflections, any one-liners you would like to share with all of us at the end of this? Okay, we may have lost Joseph, so I'm going to go to Takeshi.
We are going to start our collaboration with Kyrgyzstan.
Yes, so mine is just to say...
Wonderful. Collaboration in action. And Stein, over to you.
I think my point is that participation is not something you do at the beginning or the end, and it's not enough to have open data, it's to have open processes, where in the process you take the community along and allow them to be part of the decision making.
Thank you so much. Debbie, over to you.
Yes, Hasina, you can hear me?
Last point I want to make.
Joseph, coming to you.
Yeah. Unless we start with a small step, which should be something like
yes, mine is to say
coalition of data suppliers in the region, we are not going to move forward in any effective way. So have a concrete step in making a coalition of people who have data to work together to find some solutions for AI and digitization.
This is an excellent recommendation. Thank you, Debbie. Joseph, you're online now. If you want to share one or two lines of final reflections, we're at time. Joseph? Okay. I think we've lost him again. So, colleagues, I think this has been a very niche presentation. So, and we believe that people who are really interested and invested in this topic are here, and it was a very lively discussion and conversations, and a lot to take away. It was a very, very rich discussion, I must say. So the climate crisis isn't going to be waiting for any of us. So it's better for us to have good data, thoughtful AI, and genuine partnerships to build a resilience that reaches those who need it most. Please join me in thanking all of our participants, thanking ADB colleagues for hosting us and allowing us this space to share this innovation and this new way of working. And I hope that you found it useful, and travel safe back home, and keep these conversations going. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Bridget. Thank you so much. Thank you, colleagues online.